At Easy to Reuse, we wanted to hear directly from healthcare professionals about their real-life experiences with face masks in daily clinical practice. We asked them to reflect on how mask use today compares with their experience during the 2020 pandemic. What has changed, what has remained the same, and how it feels now. They also shared the advantages and challenges of wearing mask every day, and described what features they believe would define the ideal mask for routine professional use. Thinking about the present, what type of mask do you usually wear in your workplace?
In my daily practice, I use a surgical mask, mainly when I have direct contact with a patient during a consultation. I also use it when I need to go to see a patient in isolation, or when I carry out a contact investigation for a tuberculosis case on the ward. In those situations, I also use an FFP2 mask.
Right now, I'm using a surgical mask, okay? Because I work in a department where I'm not in direct contact with patients. But I do have to move around the hospital. And I've got into the habit that every time I move from one place to another, I take my surgical mask and put it on.
I use a surgical mask when I run vaccination consultations for immunocompromised patients. And normally, I use an FFP2 mask with a valve when I have to enter the room of a patient with a tuberculosis infection. That's how we usually use masks in our daily work.
For how long do you wear it? How many masks do you use per day?
I probably use about 3 masks. Every time I get up and leave the department, I take a new one.
It depends, because when I go up to the ward, then over the course of the day, depending on the day, it might be about an hour, or at most 2 hours.
During the pandemic, what type of mask did you usually use? What was your experience with it?
The constant use of the mask was actually quite, well, let's say somewhat problematic. There was a feeling of being a bit overwhelmed, because these masks were very tight and made my glasses fog up even more than surgical masks. It was somewhat uncomfortable in the day-to-day workflow, and I think it definitely affected communication with patients to quite a significant extent.
It was more uncomfortable. There was even a feeling of shortness of breath, a kind of tight or oppressive sensation. That was more noticeable during the pandemic, also because of the longer periods of use.
With the FFP2 masks, during the pandemic, the main discomfort was the condensation of moisture on the face when you wore them for a long time, especially the ones without a valve, which were the ones used at the time. Personally, they irritated my skin quite a lot. There was also discomfort around the ears or the head, depending on the type of fastening system each mask had.
Sometimes we used to wear an FFP2 mask, with a surgical mask on top and then a face shield as well. And then you would get ear pain, skin sensitivity, a feeling of shortness of breath, and poor visibility because everything would fog up. It was quite uncomfortable, but of course, safety came first, although it was quite unpleasant.
If you had to design a reusable mask, what features or elements would you consider essential for being able to wear it every day at work?
When it comes to the first use by healthcare professionals, it might be useful to include some kind of filter or indicator that shows, or gives professionals confidence, that the mask has been properly reprocessed. I also believe that a lot of education would be needed for healthcare professionals to explain how all of this works and how it should be used. Because at the beginning, there will always be resistance, there will always be doubts, and non-scientific concerns will inevitably appear when evaluating these kinds of measures.
I think it would be interesting if they had some kind of indicator, whether through a chemical filter with a color change or something similar. Something that would indicate when the mask needs to be replaced, when moisture has already built up, if there have been splashes or whatever the reason might be. I do think it would be useful if there were some kind of sign showing that it's time to change the mask. And then, well, if they could be made of fabric or of a material that allows better breathability while still guaranteeing impermeability, that would also be great to avoid discomfort on the face, which I think is one of the most annoying aspects.